Hi, y'all. Saying Central, post number 3, an argument for the existence of God from a point of view of existence. Sounds weird, but we'll get to a point here. As human beings, we have the capacity to observe and analyze the natural world around us. For reals, we do. Now, you and I have the ability to perceive things as being more or less. We often imagine some sort of like a scale for that, right? Something being more or less. What does that mean exactly, being more or less? Let's say, for instance, we describe light as being brighter, sorry about the handwriting, yo, or say lighter when it's white, very intense. However, when light is, say, yellowish and dim, we would say it's dull. We make some kind of a scale in our mind for like how light is a light bulb. That is an ugly light bulb. But we have like a scale in our head for how we would rank things being more or less. For instance, if it's colder than, say, 70 degrees, we would say it's all right, it's not that cold. If it's -5, we'd say it's pretty cold. We have a tendency to rank and compare things. It's deeply ingrained in us and how we interpret the world. And this applies to almost everything: temperature, color, beauty, just about whatever you can think of. That same pattern of thought now extends to our perception of goodness. This is where things get interesting. My point here. What we describe as good, for instance, a lot of it can just be summed up to states of being, or existence. We can instinctively, to some extent or another, evaluate as preferable. You and I would prefer to exist and not to. What do I mean by that? For instance, stability is often seen as better than constant flux. There's different ways of existing that you and I would view as good. We would perceive as better. For instance, it's better to be stable than to be in a constant state of flux. And while individual preferences might vary, most people would agree on certain generalizations about the human condition, such as the idea that existence is better than non-existence. Existence good, non-existence not as good. Now, see, on some level or another, we seem to intuitively rank existence itself. We value being loved over not being loved. Woohoo! Not being loved? Boo! Now, these comparisons would suggest that perhaps there's a standard to which we are actually measuring these states of existence against. For instance, it's better to be a human being, a thinking, rational human being in our minds, than it is to be a rock or a goldfish. So these comparisons of betterness, of goodness, of states of being, they all point to something. They all point to a perfect being of sorts, an ultimate reference point. And that standard of ultimate goodness, the perfection, can be understood as pointing towards the existence of a God, something beyond ourselves. If it's better to be a rational human being than it is to be a goldfish or a rock, and certainly there must be a scale and an objective standard in which we rank this against, and which is our existence and our minds point towards. Yeah. Thanks for listening. That's Saint Central. There's not too much diagrams for today, but